Hello, my name is Carrow. I am an urban fantasy author. I also write under the name of Faye Black, and I'm also the executive assistant over at Ripperverse. And today we are going to do a video about getting rejected as an author. I wanted to do this video because submission season is pretty much about to kick off again, and there are a couple of things that individuals can do in order to make sure that they're not brutally rejected. But at the same time, rejection as an author is kind of part of the process. It's the proving ground. It's the thing that we test our mettle against and all of that. And in fact, the number of people who are able to get published who don't have to go through this phase are either going to be celebrities or somebody who is really good friends with the publisher or the agent. So for the other 99% of us, we will have to go through this, and I would like to discuss it and how you can navigate through it. And rejection as an author is going to come in three forms. You are going to get rejected by an agent, you will get rejected by a publisher, and you will get rejected by readers. It will happen. There is no way to please everybody because there is no product that makes everybody happy. Remember, the basics of marketing is if you try to make everyone happy, nobody is happy, right? So you will always find somebody who doesn't either drive what it is that you're trying to do, or they just want to stand against it because of some abstract moral reason that they have to proclaim to the world. I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time talking about why you get rejected by agents and publishers, because there's a lot of common mistakes that frequently happen within those two groups that you could avoid if you pay a little bit of attention. The very first of these things is make sure that the people that you are submitting to are actually taking submissions. I have a friend who is a retired literary agent, and she still gets submissions. It even says on her website that she does not take any submissions, but because people are so excited and kind of just like, oh my goodness, please, I want you to be my agent, they submit it without realizing that they're just not active right now. Poor form. So do your research. Make sure that the people that you are looking at are currently taking some kind of submission. Some agents and some publishing houses have a rule that if you don't actually pay attention to the guidelines or you're not listening, they will never take anything from you. And the reason for that is because if you can't pay attention to basic instructions, they don't want to work with you, because that could prove to be an arduous experience that they just don't want to go through. Now, if you're on a website and you're not quite sure if they're taking submissions or not, you could send a general inquiry saying, hey, I was trying to look on the website to see if there were submissions when they would be open, and I can't find anything on your public website to indicate one way or another. That's fine, because in some cases people have their website designed poorly and without clear language, so you doing that is acceptable. You can do a check-in. But do not, at the end of that, just send in your submission. Just don't do it at all. In this hypothetical thing that we're talking about, let's pretend that you actually did go and you read the instructions and you did everything correct to the T. You've got like the best query letter that you have ever written. Your synopsis is quite amazing. Like it's polished, it's shining, and you still got rejected. Why did you get rejected? So the easiest answer is your book's not in season. Nobody really talks about that quite as widespread as I would really like them to, but publishing houses usually like to cater to a reader demand, right? And so occasionally there will be spikes in demand for certain kinds of books. So like when Twilight came out, people wanted more vampire books, so the market got saturated with vampire books. When 50 Shades came out, everybody wanted more power dynamic books, so those came out. And I can't remember what the current thing is right now. I know, let's see, when Game of Thrones was doing pretty well before that last season, people wanted more books about dragons, so those were on the rise. And you may write like a completely spectacular book. It will be groundbreaking, it will be completely amazing, but because it is not the season flavor at the time, it will get declined. A good agent and sometimes a publisher will let you know that that's not something that they're looking to publish right now, and maybe give you some kind of indication on when to do that again. Maybe not. It's really hard to say. Personally, I'm not really a big fan of the whole like catering to the fad, so to speak, because like I said earlier, the saturation part will ultimately like turn people off. I think I know a lot of people who don't like to read vampire romance novels anymore because like the market was so saturated with it, they just got sick of seeing it. And you really don't want to do that either. But so another reason you might get rejected is that you have a track history. Okay, you've got a track history. Somebody Googled your name, they found you doing XYZ, and they're not quite sure if they want to associate your brand with their brand, right? And that's pretty common. They may not come out and directly say that to you, but if you're doing some pretty questionable things on your website, like, I don't know, driving while streaming, letting your kid run naked in the background of a video or something like that, they're not going to take you because that's not quite the look that they're going for. So when you are about to start submitting to folks, take a look at your online media profile. Like take some stock. How does it look? Is this something that you would like your boss to see? If not, probably delete it, or put it under a different name and have a separate pen name or a separate account for your actual authoring self, because I tell you what, I have researched some folks and it is wild. And speaking of having a track record, agents, publishers, editors, is a very small world, and they all talk, at one point or another. It's not quite the good old boy, but it's kind of like a little, it's a temperature check. They'll be like, hey, do you know so and so? They're applying. It's like, oh yeah, I know so and so, and insert something that they would say about you here. So if you have actually worked in the industry before, or you have worked with industry professionals, keep in mind how that engagement went down, because that could decide if you actually do get published or not. Not something folks like to talk about, but it is a thing. So I talked about how traditionally published-wise you might get rejected, so I'm going to move a little bit more into the reader perspective about why you may get rejected. And we'll start with sales first. And this isn't actually like a rejection that you're going to see right away, although you will know if you don't make any money, right? So why is your book not selling, so to speak? And I can make a whole video about, things that you can do to improve like your SEO if you're a self-published author, paying attention to your cover, all that other stuff. But I'm going to try and keep it concentrated for the sake of this video. So you are going to get rejected by a reader because time and availability, right? So when I go to the bookstore, I'm not going to be there for a really long time. I am looking for something that I want to read, and it needs to kind of catch my attention pretty fast. It could be a witty title, it could be a very enticing cover, and it could be a very well-worded book blurb, right? Another thing I'm going to take into account is if my money is worth it, right? If I get like a little tiny itty-bitty book and it's for $15, I'm probably going to say no. So, and the pricing of that, again, I could probably make another video on it, but I am going to look at the product and see if it's going to be worth it. And then you have another problem, which is going to be your competition. Your book will get rejected by readers before there's even a sale because you have a lot of competition. In the course of one day, publication in all of its facets will make 5 years of content. As in one day, it would take somebody 5 years to read everything, right? So there's a lot of content, there's a lot to sift through, there's a lot for us to look for. And if somebody just happens to do it just like 1% better than you, they're going to go for that other book. So, what I would like to recommend, if you are at least somebody who's going to go in the self-published route, is to pay attention to your market, pay attention to your industry trends, see what is doing well, take note what's not doing well. I would encourage you to not think that you know what is best, and that people will just kind of come around to your way of doing it, because at the end of the day, if you're not making money, you're doing something wrong. So that's the silent rejection that hits your wallet pretty hard, right? You went through all that effort, you didn't make the sale. Now let's move into the situation where, let's say somebody did buy your book and they didn't like it. You know what they're gonna do? Well, two situations. They may not say anything and leave a 1-star review, or they'll leave a 1-star review and say something. And let me tell you, those are brutal. I wrote a blog, and it's about why book reviews are for readers, not for authors. I'll leave it down below so that way you guys can read more about that topic in depth. But there are some individuals who, when they really don't like your book, they're going to talk for a very long time about why they don't like your book, and they're going to rip it apart, and they're going to do it with complete delight on their end. There are some individuals that really do, I don't want to say get off on doing it, but they do get off on ripping your book apart. And in some cases, they'll do it under a really bad pretense. Not that I want to really call out, people who review my book, but one person left me a 1-star review and didn't actually read the book, right? And it shows when you actually read the review. And the thing is that person's entitled to do that. It's their money. They spent it how they wanted to, and they left the review with their reaction, which is 100% fine. But the people that leave these reviews, they don't really know you, they don't care about your feelings. What they're kind of aggravated about is the fact that they spent money on a product and they're ultimately disappointed. And people who are disappointed are not always going to be quiet about it, so they are going to voice their grievances. And the thing with book reviews is that on Goodreads and Amazon, they're there forever, right? And so sometimes that will be the first impression that people have about your work. And that is probably the most it's the most painful rejection that you have to try and process. And I'm personally, that's literally the reason I don't go and read any book reviews. And I'm not just talking about my book reviews, I'm just talking about book reviews in general, because some people say things about books and will personally attack authors to the point where it hurts my heart. If you are in a situation where you're getting bombarded by numerous reviews, I would probably look for a common factor with those, see if they're all saying the exact same thing, and maybe you can take your story down, retweak it, republish it under a different edition if that is the case. If not, it's just 1 or 2 people that are coming out and tearing up your book. You know what? Like I said earlier, you can't make something that makes everybody happy. That's the percentage of people that aren't going to like what you're going to write. So just don't take it personal, kind of like brush it off and move on. But I am going to kind of regress back to the fact that if you're getting a lot of them and they're all saying the same kind of thing, I would maybe take a look at something. Again, this whole video is about friending rejection, right, and what to do about it. So accept that if you are trying to do traditional publishing, it's just going to be part of the process. You're going to get rejected, mostly because time is of the essence. People are overloaded with content and they're just kind of trying to do things as fast as they can, right? So even when you get rejected, the best thing that you can do is you can keep trying. In the situation where you are submitting to editors and publishers, if they give you any kind of feedback about your story, I would definitely thank them for doing that, because that takes time to give you feedback like that, and maybe see about implementing it. Look at your writing, look at what they're suggesting, and see if something can get tweaked. I mean, you can only really just improve from that point, right? And in some cases, if they say if you make this change, you can resubmit later, that's always a really good sign. After that, I would just make sure that you keep trying. It's just part of how it goes. You're going to get rejected. It's going to happen lots of times, and it sucks. And I'm not really a fan of going through the experience, but it does happen. And again, when you are working with submissions for publishers and agents, to make sure that you are reading the submission guidelines and following them to a T. Spell check your stuff. Do everything. Try to not do things in a rush. When I used to do submissions and I was applying to places, I would do one submission a day. And the reason I did one submission a day instead of mass sending them out was because every agent and every publisher has a slightly different way that they like to do it. And so I always used to have to tweak my query letters to make sure that I was adhering to that guideline. So don't rush it, pay attention to details, and do your homework, research, blah, 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 blah. But if that doesn't work, I have always found a hot cup of cocoa and some kind of slice of life anime to help me feel better. It's just my coping mechanism. I would recommend it to you as well if you are looking for some kind of comfort after being told no multiple times, repeatedly, for 4 months. So you can try that too. But that's how I pretty much deal with it. I accept that it's normal. I know that's part of the process, and I cope realistically with, when it happens. But as you, my wonderful audience, I know that some of you have actually gone through the process as well. And if you have a coping mechanism for friending rejection, I definitely leave a comment down below, because there are a lot of new people that do come onto YouTube looking for people that are authors and have made content about being an author and going through the publishing process. So anything that you've learned along the way that maybe I didn't cover, definitely throw it in the comment section down below, so that way they can kind of peruse your insight as well. But that's the end of the video. Thank you all for coming and hearing what I have to say, and I will talk to y'all again real soon. Bye!